Hi. So welcome to our second Novoda live stream about Firebase. Today, we're going to talk about a bit about Firebase. We're going to have different people come and interact with us. The idea is to have a chat about what we've been doing with the platform, what is interesting about it, kind of learnings we've had so far. So on our side, on my couch, we have Habitin.
Hi everyone, I'm an Android developer at Novoda and I've worked on Firebase with the Android TV.
And we have Andre.
Yeah, I'm Andre. I'm an Android developer here at Novoda as well, and I've been working with Firebase on both the Android side and a little bit of the server side as well.
And we have guests as well, so we have Chetan and Mark.
Yeah.
Do we?
Yeah.
I think you were muted, guys. Are
yeah,
you?
I guess we can.
We can't hear you. Here we go.
Yeah,
Here we go.
yeah.
Sorry about that.
So I'm Mark, I'm an Android developer at Beeline. I've only recently joined, so I've only been working with Firebase for the last probably 2 or 3 weeks, mainly on the Android side, with creating some of the rules.
Great. And we also have, yeah, go for it.
So I'm CTO at Beeline. So basically, we've been using Firebase for Android and iOS app, and I've been working on the server side of security rules for databases and stuff like that.
Awesome. We also have Ewan joining us.
Hi, my name is Ewan. I'm an app developer. I've got an app called Transcend Timer. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes, you can hear me. Hello. I'll start again. My name's Ewan. I'm an app developer. I've got an app called Transcend Timer that's been live for about 3 months, I think. I used Firebase right from the start, but really only using events and crash reporting. So crash reporting events have been live for that time, and I'm now working on using authentication in the database to add some new functionality to it. So that's me.
And I'm Benjamin. I'm an Android developer at Novoda as well. I've been playing with Firebase like quite a lot when it was announced. Kind of built the usual sample app, like a chat app that we've done with Android and iOS together. That was kind of an interesting experiment for us to see how Firebase was stacking up in terms of production environments. And today I'll just be here for the chat with you and just try and guide the conversation a bit. All right, so let's have a chat. So, Chetan, you said that you were working with like using the database to back up the whole, basically the whole like data storage of your app. Can you tell us a bit more about that?
Yeah, sure. So basically, to start with, we were using Realm in our iOS app, which we actually built before we built the Android app, and that was great as a local data storage. And then we were looking for ways to synchronize that data to a server so that users can log in, they can save all their data, they can see histories of stuff, they don't lose it if they move to another device. And sort of we were wondering how we managed to do that. So we looked at a few different things like using Mongo and MySQL backends, and then just sort of building our own API around that. But frankly, as like a very small company with very few employees, we were quite reluctant to build a team to build out the backend. So what we decided to do was use Firebase because it seemed like the best option for something scalable that allows us to throw a lot of data at it and kind of not worry too much about where it gets stored or how it gets stored. And we can sort of focus on more of the front end problem and data format. And it's been working really well for us.
Great. So, Andre, I know you've been working as well on our side with like the database. Like, what's your take on like how it was to integrate it and kind of what you're using it for?
Yeah, so just to give a context, we use it for in our project to store our data. So on our side, we began looking at Firebase because of the same reasons you mentioned, Chetan. So we don't have in-house like the power of like the leverage to create a backend at first. So we are here at Novoda mostly native Android and iOS developers, and Firebase looks like a suitable solution for us. And yeah, first experience was a little bit confusing, to be honest, like shifting your mindset from that SQL mindset to the NoSQL mindset. Yeah, this was our first point of confusion for us, at least. Yeah, but slowly we were getting into it, adapted to our needs.
I definitely agree with that. I think there's I guess I haven't really used much of a NoSQL background drawings, things like done like DB a little bit, and that was useful. And I guess some of that thinking was useful in Firebase, but actually, I think the way you structure your data in Firebase and the way you deal with security rules and things is actually quite it's quite new. And to be honest, we struggled with finding examples of how to achieve what we wanted to achieve, and we sort of learned more by trial and error than anything. And that was a difficult bit. But now that we're sort of getting there with knowing how to use it, how to structure it, then it makes a lot more sense.
Ewan, maybe like give us also a bit of info on like what exactly you're using the database for.
Well, I'm going to use it really to add social functions to my app and to another app in the pipeline. So this is sort of the familiar chat app, but it kind of suddenly occurred to me as soon as I started looking to Firebase, just in theory, how easy it should be to add this stuff. So that's what I'm doing at the moment, and I haven't really had any problems at all yet. I was thinking about the whole thing of if you go live with things and then you decide you want to start implementing different data structures, then it could become very complicated very quickly, I imagine. You know, and if you want to if you've got a load of live data and you then want to migrate to slightly different structures, so it might be that if one predicts that, you could make things a lot easier for yourself down the line by having ways of upgrading. And then, of course, you have the problem of which version of your app people are using and so on. So you've got some people using the new version, some people using the old version. So you'd have to do clever things, I imagine. So, but then NoSQL databases have been going for quite a while, haven't they? I think.
Yeah.
So there must be quite a lot of info out there.
Yeah, exactly, and that's one of the best advice, like probably to give about people who might be starting with Firebase, and a lot of people, I think it's going to be their first approach to a NoSQL database, especially if they've been working in the mobile world. It hasn't really been the focus so far, but it's been around for quite a while. There's a lot of tools like LevelDB that exist that have been used quite heavily on the web and server side as well, and so for like kind of people who might have doubts and might have questions about how to approach things, it's a great way to just try and find resources. It's not just searching for Firebase, but searching for just NoSQL database, LevelDB. How do people do migrations? How do people do like updates, and how do they manage different versions and different releases? A lot of those things have already been solved, just potentially not in the environment you're familiar to look in, I guess.
They give you a lot of stuff for free, don't they? Because you can immediately just use their library to log in and so on. So you haven't got any of that faff of writing authentication code, which is quite good.
Great. Yeah, just a quick reminder for all the people watching us live on YouTube, don't hesitate to put questions down in the live chat. We're looking at it, and we're going to try and answer questions as we go through. Questions for us, questions for our guests, or just any question you have around like the topics that are being discussed. It's really like a place for us to have that chat. So do the questions.
Something about Firebase. I wanted to add something. So the good thing that I've seen when we were using Firebase is it's a good way to know our users, because it's a real-time database. So you can know more how they are acting on your phone and on your apps. So it's pretty interesting.
Yeah, it's really an interesting topic, and I guess that kind of touches a bit what you guys have been working on, because one of the reasons we decided to use Firebase for that TV experience is not just like it's new technology, it allows us to do some server-side like a bit easier, but we had a need to get more information about our users, and also we had a need to get multiple devices together, right?
Yeah. So our idea is to create this immersive experience across more platforms, and we were thinking about like who can glue them together, who can gather them together, and thought that Firebase with its syncing capabilities, it seems like the right technology to use, at least for now. And what you touched on that point, Iwan, on migrations of data, we thought about that as well. We don't have like a solution for ourselves, but what we've thought about, and anyone can jump in with their opinions as well. Like one of the ways to do it is versioning, as you said. Like maybe you have different nodes in your Firebase database with the version of your data structure, let's say, so that you can keep in sync clients with a different version and the updated clients with an updated version, and so on. As well as we looked at other NoSQL solutions out there, how they do it. You can also run on a separate server-side client certain scripts just to migrate your data to your new data, and so on. So these were our thoughts about it. I'm not sure how you thought about it, how you guys thought about migrating data in this case.
Well, it's just more complicated when you have people live, isn't it? Because you can't just run a migration script overnight and go to your new version.
Yeah, that's why we thought about splitting in different versions, so that people that are already live point to the old version, let's say, and people who will get to the new updated app will point to the new version, and slowly you see how many people use which version, and maybe possibly in the distant future discard an old version.
Yeah, I think also it's important to always ask questions about like what in your models is like mandatory data, what is like data that can be optional, data that you might have some sensible defaults for, because you might not always need to version like from one version to another. If you're adding a field and that field doesn't need to be there all the time, then it's fairly easy to just add that piece of information whenever your app is a new version and you read it, and then all the other versions just like discard it and don't look at it. So there's definitely ways for certain types of updates to your model to be done without having to worry about versioning, as long as certain rules are respected. And then it's only when there's sort of breaking changes, I guess, that we need to start having a look at versioning and worrying about like how to migrate users from one set to another.
So we did some, well, we haven't really had to do a migration yet, but what we did do to start with is we had a bit of data for a beta test that we did, and for that we were just sort of storing JSON files in S3, and that was like our way of just being able to get some data back from our users. And what we wanted to do was kind of migrate that data into Firebase and keep using that. And the sort of same sort of structure we use for doing that, we've actually found is quite useful for a number of other things. So, so what we did for that actually was we set up an AWS Lambda job. So Lambda is just something that will run a function when something happens on AWS. So we set up a job that would just, whenever a file is uploaded to our S3 bucket, we would just call Firebase via the S3 API, sort of unzip that JSON, and then just send it all into Firebase. And then it's all kind of magically there. And then all the new versions of our app just pointed to Firebase rather than S3 and had a new code. And it kind of, we just ended up with a completely seamless migration, which worked really, really well.
Great, that's a really good idea. It's awesome that it worked that well as well.
Yeah, so and I think like if you're going to do another version migration, like you said, you could use a different Firebase node. But I mean, I imagine it'd be pretty easy to set up a job that would listen for data coming into one node on Firebase and then just push it out into another project. I'm not sure the APIs that Firebase gives you deal with that particularly well, to be honest. But I mean, it should be pretty straightforward.
It should be pretty easy to do. So there's this concept of trusted servers that Firebase has, which allows you to run in the Google Cloud Platform a sort of elevated like instance. So you can have a Firebase client that runs that has admin rights, that has a bit more access to the data, and you can have that running that just watches a pass, and then whenever data is inserted to it, or whenever something happens, to then just perform any action. So you could just use it to do exactly that. Whenever something is inserted in that node, just kind of duplicate it, slightly transformed into the new data format at that other node. and then kind of maintain that running server while the transaction is happening.
As a matter of fact, the Firebase recently released their admin SDK. So what that admin SDK is more like a second party rather than third party client. So it has elevated permissions, so you can manage your users. You can write in your database having like custom security privileges. So you can use the admin SDK in the trusted server, how Ben mentioned, to manipulate the data.
Yeah, so actually we're talking about like permissions here. One of the big part of Firebase is also the database rules. There's a lot of potential here to set up like user-specific like tree nodes, but also like sharing information with friends to try and create like custom rule sets. So I don't know if you guys have played with that a bit, like just kind of trying to have an experience with the database rules.
I can say a few things about that. So we're using Firebase to store data for our app. So our app is basically a navigation tool for cyclists. It's connected to a piece of hardware. So we're storing things like user information. We're storing things like ride histories, favorite routes, favorite places, things like that. And we've basically completely written out exactly the data format that we want to store everything in our Firebase rules, and that kind of assures that we've got clean data going in and make sure that our clients are doing the right thing. I can tell you a couple of tools that we've used for that. Actually, it's been really, really useful. So we're using Bolt. The Bolt is a sort of DSL from the Firebase team. It's kind of still an alpha, but we found it really, really useful anyway. So basically, you can kind of write an object with with a number of properties, and each property can have a type, and you can then define what your types are. So you can say my type's a string, or it's a string that has to match this regex, or it's an object that has to have these fields, etc., etc., etc. And it's quite nice because you can reuse your type hierarchy. You can say, well, this type appears in a number of different places. You don't have to manually write out all the JSON files, which you normally have to do when you're writing Firebase rules. So we found that super, super useful, but actually we found that sometimes it's quite easy to make a bit of a mistake with it, or kind of maybe misunderstand how the security rules work. So we built a library of tests that test those rules. So there's a really awesome project called Targaryen. Targaryen is basically something that will read a Firebase rules JSON file and allow you to do just really simple, like, can I read and can I write given this data and given this request. So you can just write. We've got, I think, over 100 tests for our data structure, and it gives us a lot of confidence to make sure that the data doesn't get in the wrong hands and that it's always in the right format.
That's amazing, especially given the fact that with my previous experience, at least, I know that the database rules were something that I really enjoyed having, but I always found that it was a bit difficult to test them. It was a bit difficult to validate things. And so it's good to know that there's definitely tools out there to help us make sure that as we grow the complexity of the relations and the rules in our database, that we can actually just test it, just make sure that like everything we ship is stable.
Just going back a bit to something that was said earlier, I think one doesn't necessarily have to dive straight into the database, because personally with an app, I found it extremely helpful using Firebase events, because I just put events at different places in the app. So I can see when people say if they start to meditate and they don't finish, or if they finish, and how far apps are into the sort of the free ad free period and so on. And you get a number of events for free as soon as you start using it. So you see anybody that opens the app for the first time that day, people that uninstall and so on. So it's much simpler to get started with than the database. It's really easy to use.
Yeah, actually, it was the same for us on our app. The events was very useful, and we have like the stream view. Like this, you can know if your user is using your app in France or in UK or something like this. You can know what they do, And as well, I don't know for you, but I've used debug view, for knowing if your event was really sent it to Firebase or not. So debug view was, it was super cool for us to know if everything was fine, and yeah. But
it's interesting. I haven't quite got to the bottom of it, because through this I can log from my app when I think people should be seeing ads, and then of course from Ads Mob I see the number of impressions that have actually been served up. So that's quite interesting to see. It's not always exactly the same, so I haven't quite figured that out yet.
Interesting. Yeah, so as Hossein was mentioning, like on the analytics tool, the part of Firebase that is probably growing the fastest is the analytics. Like they're adding quite a lot of functionality to it, including the debug view and the stream view, which are at the moment available through like I think a closed beta. So there is a need to register to get access to it. But it's probably going to be rolling out like to a wider range of people, and it's definitely something that helps to have like a real-time visualization of the events as they go through, just to help you like set up the project at the beginning.
Yeah, so. As well, if you have like a bug, you can more easily know what's happening on the debug view and know exactly what is the wrong thing that happened on your phone, on your app. So yeah, it's really useful. Yeah.
What's this called?
Debug view.
Debug view.
Debug view. Okay, right.
Now it's in how Ben mentioned, in a closed beta. So we had the opportunity to sign up our project to it, and basically it gives you like instant real-time visualization of your Firebase analytics events coming through, because usually it takes about a day to see them in the console. But with debug view,
like only seconds.
Yeah, it's just a few seconds. You run your debug app, you see them there, and yeah, any potential errors. So to make sure that your events are fired correctly.
I think actual errors do come through within 5 minutes.
Something like yeah.
Like on the crash reporting side, they do come in quickly. Yeah. And what's more interesting now with Firebase, I don't know if you've experimented a little bit with it on the crash reporting side and analytics part. Now they're merged together. So whenever you get a crash report, you can see what analytics events have been made up until the crash. So for us, proved to be really, really useful, and I think for any product to see
This is within debug view, is it? Or
No. This is right now integrated in the product itself. So when you experience a crash, it will show you in the crash reporting console all the analytics events happening prior to the crash. So you get a nice journey of the user, what it's been doing from an analytical point of view up until the crash. Yeah,
that's interesting. I haven't seen that. Right.
Check it out on the crash reporting, and if you click on a particular crash, you'll see like a timeline of Firebase analytics events there.
There's just some information in addition to the usual, which is the stack trace of your crash. You just also get that kind of small timeline that gives you an idea about what were the analytics event that was sent before, so that you know kind of what journey the user has taken. So it gives a bit more context when we're trying to.
I look at that now because I haven't seen that. They have some problems actually because some of the stack traces get garbled. I don't know if you've seen this. Because I posted to the Firebase group and Dan, I think it is, replied, and Doug replied and said, no, there is a bug. Because I see some crash reports coming back and you get some of the fields say null and some of the methods clearly don't send one another. So there are some issues there at the moment.
Interesting.
That's good to know. I guess one of the good thing is like for anyone that wants to start playing with Firebase, is like don't hesitate to report those bugs to the team at Google. They're really pushing Firebase quite hard, so that means they're really reactive, and they usually answer pretty quickly. And like so far, it's been a pretty good experience whenever we had like questions to ask them. So yeah.
I'm just wondering, to what extent you guys have found that Firebase Analytics provides you with all the analytics tools you need? So there are obviously a lot of different analytics tools around. There's things or other things from Google, like Google Analytics, right? And those are a lot better at doing analytics for apps and probably more in depth. But I'd love to know kind of like how much you found those things work for you, or are there other tools that you use for other kinds of analytics?
Yeah. So here in Novoda, we're using like a bunch of other tools as well. As you mentioned, Google Analytics, or use Fabric as well, a little bit with Answers and so on, and Firebase, of course. Yeah, our experience is mixed. Like there's some things that we miss from other tools. Like one of the things was this live dashboard of your analytics that is coming up in Firebase. Another thing that our colleagues at some point complained about on the Firebase analytics side of things is the lack of proper funneling. I think there was like a mismatch between how many users have an event and so on. And yeah, that we don't like we've not seen so much difference, but would like to see your opinion. Have you been using different analytics tool and seeing differences between Firebase Analytics and the others?
I don't know if you can add mob as an analytics tool. If you do, then I use that, but no. I mean, I have seen differences between AdsMob and Firebase, but that's a slightly different thing.
So we've just been using Answers here ourselves, and Answers is pretty good for giving you some really high-level stats. And we have some stuff that when it happens in our database, we can actually see it real time. So we've got our own dashboards that mean that we can see like when certain events happen. And we've done that using Firebase database, which is great. But in terms of analytics, we're still working out what's our best solution. So currently, what we're thinking for more detailed analytics is to use something like Segment. Now, Segment's really great because they have SDKs for Android, iOS, web, but they essentially just multicast those events to anywhere you like, to Google Analytics, Mixpanel. And I got in touch with them, and they actually said that they're adding Firebase analytics support into that as well. So that might be a kind of nice way to kind of support anything and everything you might need.
That would be really good because Firebase, like as I was mentioning, I think the analytics part is the part that is growing the fastest. But it's definitely like lacking a fair bit with regards to like other offerings at the moment in terms of like the dashboard being like easy to use and like having the same depth of analysis that you have from the get-go with other tools. But at the same time, there's like a big part of why it's exciting and why it's like really fun to use is that you can actually have all the analytics data exported to BigQuery. And that is a feature that people tend to overlook, probably because like part of it is it's actually you have to pay for the data that you send to BigQuery. So it kind of goes a bit outside of the free tier that you can play with by default. But the possibilities are really amazing. We've played with it on Bonfire app, and we wanted to know, for example, like we had a few peaks of people being onboarded in the app, and we wanted to know for different countries, like where did they come from? And so you can actually use your analytics data from Firebase into BigQuery, and then you can add the information from all the Reddit comments. And so what we ended up doing is we have the public data set of all the Reddit comments since like 2007 that is available on BigQuery. And you can cross-reference that to metadata about your application. And then you can realize that on the days where there was a blog post that was published that was linked on Reddit, all the US market converted into your app. And so from there on, actually that if you want to do some advertising for your application, Reddit is a great place if you want to get more US customers. And that's the type of really in-depth query that you can do from other data sets in addition to your analytics that is quite difficult to do with any other tools, really. Yeah, for people who are interested in seeing a bit more about dashboards with like BigQuery and the type of visualization you can have, go have a look at the previous episode, like the previous stream we did. It's on the same YouTube channel that you're just currently watching. We talked about that a bit briefly.
Cool.
So one thing that was mentioned a few times, like when we were asking you a few questions like before we went live, was around scalability. I know that that's definitely a concern for you guys, Chetan, because you just went live with your app, and there's quite a lot of data to feed in. So can you tell us a bit more about that?
Well, I mean, basically, I think one of the issues is for us is that we sort of have to trust that Firebase is as scalable as we want it to be right now. We know that kind of given the number of users we've got, it's like, I mean, it will easily handle that, and that's okay. But there are certain things like, for example, if you don't put an index on something when you're querying, then in your logs on the device it will say, hey, have you thought about adding an index here, because otherwise this might be slow. Well, I mean, do I care if it's slow? Like, how slow? We don't know how. It's really hard to make decisions about. Is this something we should care about, or is this something we shouldn't? I mean, they put those logs there for a reason, and so obviously we go back through and fill in those indexes. But we don't. What we struggle with is, like, how do we get numbers on, how long queries should be taking? What kind of queries are more complex? How do we do that? I'm not really sure. I don't know if you guys have any experience on that, but if you do, please let us know.
Yeah, I think this is the thing that we struggle as well. Like there are no like public benchmarks. As far as I know, I would be very happy to see if there is any benchmark around speed and scalability of the database itself. It's just as you mentioned, the assurance from Google that things will work and you can scale. Pretty much that's our benchmark up until now. Yeah. So, and we haven't done any ourselves.
Yeah,
because we haven't, like, we're not live with the app that we're developing, and we don't have so much data to see an impediment in scalability. Yeah.
I think also one of the biggest part around scalability, and that's the same as any sort of NoSQL database, is around how things are structured, and then kind of indexes provided by the platform, also compared to just flattened data that you store like separately. Like all those decisions based on how you model your data. Do you want to optimize like inserting data, or do you want to optimize reading data? Those have like a big impact, because if you're going to do a few inserts but a lot of read, then you might want to start duplicating more and have like nodes that represent pretty much like directly what you're going to read, to avoid having to do some form of mapping with saying like, well, I'm reading this, and then using that piece of information, I read that other node. Like the more steps you add, the less it's going to scale. Whereas if you just flatten everything, then it's easy to query. But at the same time, that means there's a bit more effort at the insert time. There's a lot of interesting articles around how to do things like that with LevelDB. Like some people use like background services that just run a function that duplicates data after it's inserted to have like ahead of time preparing queries, basically. There's a lot of like interesting research on like how to optimize NoSQL databases, and I think Firebase is very much in that vein. It's just a shame that, as mentioned, we just don't have that much of a benchmark yet to see exactly what yields good results, I guess.
Do they give metrics for database access from Google App Engine, do you know? Because presumably everybody using databases from Google App Engine wants exactly the same thing.
I'm not sure. I haven't seen anything about that, to be honest. I also don't know exactly like how the Firebase instances are running themselves. Like as much as if you run your own client with like the admin SDK or like trusted servers to a certain degree, that's very much under your control, because you run it on your own like Google App Engine, like Kubernetes like instance, and then you have control over like how your things are like spread out. I'm not sure it's really that easy at the moment to know exactly where and how that structure happens for Firebase.
So one thing found in terms of structuring your data is that maybe slightly different to what you might do in another NoSQL environment, is because because if you're writing a database, you essentially have these client libraries that pretty much provide you with stuff that you can plug in like right from the UI, right? So there's things like Android and iOS on Firebase UI libraries, which are really, really useful. Because of that, we found that you almost necessarily have to structure your data so that it makes sense to the client. And then, whatever else you want to do with it, yes, you can do it BigQuery or you can do it some other ways. Yeah, I mean, you just have to optimize for making sure the experience of the client is right, and then you can kind of do all the other stuff ahead of time as you want. So we've just got some, we've got some servers using the Java SDK. They're actually written in Clojure, but they're just running like really simple Clojure functions to just take bits of data and copy them elsewhere, just so we have the indexes that we need. And they're just kind of running on AWS without, on EC2 in Docker instances that are really, really simple, easy to set up, only a few lines of code, and that's done the job. Well, we really have to focus on just structuring the data so that the client gets everything in the right format to start with.
Yeah, that's frankly our approach as well. Like we think from a query perspective, and we structure our data how we want to read it. And as you mentioned, yeah, if we need additional computation or additional like helper nodes for indexes, as you mentioned, we can have our own trusted server, trusted service to create that for us ahead of time. So yeah, I see that this is like a shared technique.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, we can use Firebase for that. I mean, see Firebase to know what are the query that is the most used, the query is who is the most used. And then with this, you can like put index when you need it, not without being blind. And yeah, but it's useful for this.
I mean, one of the nice things is that basically because you can essentially just listen for new data coming in, you can just, on any node, just listen for n children on this node, and you just get a callback whenever that happens, and you can run a function for it. So it's actually really, really easy to create stuff that copies data around, or set up your own webhooks triggers. It's actually really, really simple, which is great.
Yeah, and it's definitely like we've covered that like a bit in our previous episode as well, if people want to have that for reference. But I think one of the biggest advice I've ever had when I started working with NoSQL database is just don't be afraid of duplicating data. It's definitely not the normalized structure where we have to have like only one instance of the user and everything. Like in the NoSQL world, it's very much okay to just duplicate data around. It does mean that there's a need for a bit of maintenance when everything gets updated, and that's where potentially servers running in the background can help us like maintaining those kind of copies in sync. But duplicating data and flattening those different nodes to have exactly what we need to query is a really big help to make sure that things remain like fast to access and just like easy to query.
Yeah, because most of the time the questions are around data consistency, right? Like in a SQL environment, you have consistency out of the box, but in a NoSQL, we found out that eventual consistency at some point in the future, for us, it's enough. Like if we have those processes that process the data, and as you mentioned, with Firebase, it's really, really easy to know what happened on a particular node when something was added or deleted. Eventually, the data will be consistent throughout your database. Yeah. So it was for us shifting our mind towards this concept was a little bit difficult in the beginnings.
Presumably, you don't have too many ideas about real-time updates if you have hundreds of thousands of people waiting. Pretty hard to simulate, isn't it? But presumably it all works fine.
Yeah, as in once again, that kind of gets into the scaling.
Well, the metrics for that, yeah.
It's difficult to know exactly how the instance reacts when there's like millions of people querying at the same time. But this is, I think Chet put it pretty well when he said it kind of falls into the let's just trust that it will scale. And I mean,
They are Google. Yeah.
I know that Google are working quite heavily on that. Like, Chetan was there as well, and like all of us as well attended in Berlin to the Firebase Dev Summit, which was a really interesting thing. By the way, all the videos from the Firebase Dev Summit are available on YouTube. I highly encourage anyone who's interested into learning about like the new things that are coming and like the new tools that have been released. Just go and have a look at them, because they get quite into detail around like what the debug view will be, like all those different tools. And talking with the engineers over there was really interesting to see like what are their priorities, and they're definitely looking at like making analytics better and just making sure that like it will scale up. They have partners with like different companies that are already working with Firebase, and just trying to make sure that all those kind of big scale requirements will be available with Firebase. So I guess let's see how that goes, and let's just hope we can adapt if there's anything to adapt, and just like make it work.
I hope I hit those problems of millions of users. So.
Yeah, right. It's a good problem to have. To the point where it's like, oh, what do I do with millions of users? It's a great problem to have. But to be honest, like I don't see like the big companies like straight away using it, or if they do, they'll probably have a direct line with Google. Like as always, you know, it's usually new technology is adopted by like smaller like companies, like things you're starting up, where you have a bit more flexibility, a bit less risk as well. Like you don't have to launch something that has to support 20 million users straight away. That's always the big plus.
By the way, Alibaba said that he was working with Firebase. Maybe he has published something about that. I don't know. But it can be interesting.
Yeah, true.
I remember that there was here in the Dev Summit in Berlin. So yeah, maybe they have a lot of data. So.
Yeah, Alibaba is like a fairly big product. So yeah, I'm guessing they probably have some experiences with that. Also, it's interesting to see like what parts of Firebase different people are using. Being such a wide offering, like some people decide to start using it for analytics, some people start using it for the database, for the crash reporting. It's kind of really interesting to see how like different people come from fairly different needs, and then start, oh, so now that I've used it, I can start looking at the rest of the offering and see what it can bring me.
Yeah, and being integrated like makes it such easier. Like how they put it. For example, they try to integrate analytics in all of their products, even if you don't want specifically to have like analytics events, but that's good, right? So if you have analytics everywhere, you can learn about your users, about how it's being used, how your database is being used. Like what I hope for the future is to have even more insight on maybe performance metrics, to have some kind like what I would wish for in a dashboard in Firebase is to see like a little bit of performance metrics as well, how the database is performing, and maybe how I can improve my data structure to make it perform even better for my use case. That would be quite a nice addition, but nothing has been said about this, so it's just my only hope.
Let's see where it goes.
Yeah.
So we're getting close to, I think, sort of end time for our event. Let's do maybe like a kind of quick end of room. So if you have any like last thing you wanted to talk about, any idea of improvement you want to see coming to Firebase, or any cool ideas you're going to be implementing next, and that people can look forward to if they follow you on Twitter or on GitHub or anything. That'd be interesting to just have like that kind of last closing statement from all of us. So do you have anything that you're going to be looking forward to, David? Or
again, with the big view and the stream view, to see more functionalities about this and to know the user better.
Peter, Mark, anything from your side?
Yeah, so something that I've done with recently is querying and then filtering. So kind of being able to do SQL style queries. Seems to be an annotation at the moment in Firebase, so I'll be looking forward to some improvement there. It seems to be in the roadmap, but maybe a long way off still. I've been kind of throwing stuff to GitHub, but yeah, I still think it's a long way off. But I'm looking forward to it.
I'm looking forward to seeing a bit more sort of testing support. So what you and some testing support in on the client side, absolutely. So like how do we sort of make our own like mock-up at Firebase essentially and sort of put mock data there and like check that your app is doing the right thing. But also on the server side, like can we, how do you make sure that your server infrastructure and your server code is doing what you want? How do you test that against, maybe a mock instance there? And then, continuous integrations for deploying, deploying rules or deploying changes to the server infrastructure. Let's see more support of that.
Right. And Ewan, from your side?
Hello. Yeah. Well, yeah, that's exactly what I'm working on at the moment. And there's been various comments about it from Espresso, how you work with Espresso when things are happening. So you can write things called idling resources. So I don't know if one actually, for doing end-to-end Firebase tests, if you want, you could do idling resources. I mean, equivalently, you can just do you can just sleep for a few seconds while it does it, and which works. So I'm working on that. I'm also writing this intermediate layer that I can then mock, but I just have that horrible feeling that everybody's writing the same thing at the same time. So, but there we go. I'm also interested in what happens with the crash reporting and seeing events. I'm going to go and look at that now, in fact, because I didn't know that was there. So that's interesting to me, yeah.
One thing that I forget, I will take more time to look for the remote config feature, very interesting for A/B testing, and yeah, take the time to play with it more.
The what? The remote config?
Yeah, the remote config is
yeah.
great, really.
Yeah, a lot of things to look out forward to. Yeah, so oh, I have a question. Ah, interesting. Yeah, someone is making an interesting point on the live chat about making an Android Wear version of the app, and that Firebase authentication is not yet supported directly on Android Wear, and will replace and won't be in place when Android Wear 2.0 launches. So I guess for now, for the authentication on the watch, you kind of have to work around by probably delegating quite a bit to the phone app, which means that you can't do like fully autonomous Wear watches app using Firebase authentication, which is like I guess a limitation.
Yeah.
So interesting to see if they manage to sort that out in the future. In any case, I wanted to thank like all of you for joining us. It was really interesting to have a chat with you guys. We'll definitely put like your details in the description of the video so that people who were interested in what you had to present, like things that you'll be doing in the future, your products can find you. As I was mentioning earlier on, this is a recurring event, so we're doing this every month. We're going to try and have a chat with different people from the community, what people have been doing with Firebase, what we've been doing with it, what we've learned. So don't hesitate to get in touch with us through Twitter or any other means. Just get us to know like the types of topics and questions you're interested in, things you want to see us discuss next month. And in the meantime, have a look at the video that will be available on YouTube straight after this is finished if you joined halfway through. Yeah, just subscribe to our channel to have all the updates when the new events will come through. I want to say once again a big great thank you to everybody for joining us and for helping us making this an event. And goodbye, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye. Thanks for being here.
Bye.
Thanks. Bye.